everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. The FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report is sponsored by the Red Flag Group. The Red Flag Group is a business advisory, information services, technology firm that helps clients manage risk areas across 4 key risk areas, including sales and sales channels, which includes distributors, resellers, and partners, suppliers, customers, and human capital, which of course includes employees and contractors. You can check out more information on the Red Flag Group at their website, www.redflaggroup.com. Today I am in a series of the 10 Hallmarks of Effective Compliance Program. This is a series I've wanted to do for some time. So this podcast is going to be quite a bit different. It's going to be short, right, 10 minutes or so. And we're going to go into a specific hallmark of the best practices was articulated by the Department of Justice and Securities and Exchange Commission in the 2012 FCPA Guidance. This series is based upon my seminal work on doing compliance, which is of course entitled Doing Compliance, Design, Create, and Implement an Effective Anti-Corruption Compliance Program. You can check out my book at Compliance Week. If you go to their site, www.complianceweek.com, and then click under Thought Leadership, then in-depth reports, and scroll down, you'll see my books available. So I hope you will check it out. I hope this podcast series might interest you in learning a little bit more about the actual doing of compliance. Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox again, and today we are on day 3 of my 10-day review of the 10 hallmarks of an effective compliance program. So we're at hallmark number 3, which is Oversight, Autonomy and Resources. The Department of Justice has made clear over the years of the importance of this hallmark. The FCPA Guidance states, in appraising a compliance program, both the DOJ and the SEC will consider whether a company has assigned responsibility for the oversight and implementation of a company's compliance program to one or more specific senior executives within an organization. And indeed, the U.S. sentencing guidelines have previously stated that specific individuals within an organization should be delegated day-to-day operational responsibility for a compliance and ethics program. Individuals with operational responsibility shall report periodically to high-level personnel and, as appropriate, to the governing authority of the company or an appropriate subgroup of the governing authority, in other words, the board or the audit committee of the board, on the effectiveness of the compliance and ethics program. To carry out such an operational responsibility, the specific individual shall be given the resources, appropriate authority, and direct access to the governing authorities or the appropriate subgroup. While there was previously an ongoing debate about whether or not the Chief Compliance Officer needed to be both separate from the General Counsel's office and report directly to the board or report through the General Counsel, while the Department of Justice and SEC have taken no formal position on that, I think it's pretty clear that the majority of companies are now moving in the direction of having their CCOs, their Chief Compliance Officers, separate and apart from their General Counsel and report directly to the CEO or the board. Indeed, in a 2015 Deloitte Compliance Week Compliance Trends Survey, it reported that out of 364 respondents, 57% gave this. While this number has fluctuated over time, it's clearly marching upwards, and both the CCO is being rewarded with a seat on the executive committee, and even a greater number, 59%, said it's a standalone position. So this clearly shows that companies are recognizing that these roles need to be split, and that there needs to be oversight by the board of directors of the company over the compliance program. A board's duty under the FCPA is well known, and indeed in Hallmark number 1, if we go back to that, it states within a business organization, compliance begins with the board of directors and senior executives setting the proper tone. But here in Hallmark number 3, there's an additional requirement of the board which says the CEO should have direct access to the organization's governing authority, such as the board of directors and committees of the board. and we've already gone over the sentencing guidelines, but the question is, indeed the DOJ's prosecution standards is, does the board exercise independent review of the company's compliance program? And then are the directors provided information sufficient to help them make that independent exercise of judgment? So the board needs to oversee that function, and the board needs to be able to do more than simply receive information, but be there to ask tough questions. The board has to exercise appropriate oversight and indeed actual oversight over the company compliance program. Clearly, this must be documented and must be reflected in the board meeting minutes or other indicia which shows the board has done their job. Resources. So funding for your compliance program is always one of the biggest challenges for any chief compliance officer. Short of being in the middle of a worldwide FCPA investigation, you are never going to receive all of the funding you want, or perhaps even that you think you need. But this corporate reality is not going to save you when the government comes knocking. The FCPA Guidance states that, moreover, the amount of resources devoted to compliance will depend on the company's size, complexity, industry, geographic reach, risks associated with the business. In assessing whether the company has a reasonable internal controls, for instance, the Department of Justice and SEC will consider whether the company has devoted adequate staffing and resources to the compliance program given the size, structure, and risk profile of the organization. And if you think about the statements made by Wei Chin, the new compliance counsel for the Department of Justice, and the FCPA pilot program announced in April, one of the key indicia that she specifically articulated that she would be looking at is whether the company dedicates sufficient resources to the compliance function. So the resources issue is going to be significant going forward. This means both headcount resources and monetary resources. If your company is cut off your budget, that is not going to play well with the Department of Justice. My friend Stephen Martin often uses the following analogy. If someone comes in and makes a presentation to the government, they might say something along the lines of, well, that's great. I know you did everything you could with the amount of money you did, but what was your annual spend last year on yellow sticky notes? And the answer usually comes back, and really doesn't matter what it is, 500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million. And if the spend on the compliance was 1/5 of that, or 1/4 of that, or 1/3 of that, the response from the government is going to be, what is more important? What is more business critical to you managing your risks? Is it having an effective best practices compliance program, or is it going to be yellow sticky notes? So that's really what you're going to have to justify in terms of resources. But even if you can't or don't have sufficient headcount resources, do not think that there are not other resources available for your assistance in compliance, because you can look to other areas of your company. An obvious starting place is human resources. Internal audit is another function that you could look at for assistance. A corporate IT department is going to be critical for you. You can embed the compliance function through compliance champions in divisions and functions around your company. You can have a facility compliance officer if you're a project-based business model. So there's lots of things you can do. It's important for you to document whatever you have done and the efforts you have made going forward. And I would suggest that every step that you take, every success you have, be documented in writing so you can show the government a roadmap of what you have done with the resources that are going to be available to you. But I can't really overemphasize this issue enough. It's not something the government has focused on previously, but the information released in the FCPA pilot program made clear that the DOJ is going to start looking at resources. So you're going to have to be able to justify your resources. You're going to have to be able to justify what you did with the money you have, but more importantly, did the money you have equate to the size, structure, the type of business you have. This is Tom Fox. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report, where I focused on one hallmark in the 10 hallmarks of an effective compliance program. If you want more information, I hope you will read my blog post today. It collates to this podcast, so I'm trying to do a written and audio series for everyone. If you would like to utilize this audio in any of your training materials, please contact me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com, and we can make arrangements for that as well. Also, once again, the series is based upon my textbook or my book, Doing Compliance, Design, Create, and Implement an Effective Compliance Program. And I would urge you to go to Compliance Week and check out my book if you'd like any more information. I have much more detail in the book. This is Tom Fox. I'd like to thank you very much for listening to this episode.